What actually motivated you to complete this?
Initially, it was just a random news item I saw that said that I think it was 10,000 children had been moved into, I think it was New Orleans that year for the Super Bowl, to work as prostitutes at the Super Bowl, underage children. And I found the numbers so astonishing. It just sort of went across a TV screen, and I was like, that can't be true. And so I started to look at that, and you know, as the mother, I have 2 daughters, so as the mother of young daughters, it really struck me and was surprising. So initially I just wanted to find out more, and at the beginning I filmed just the young girl called Rain, who started when she was 11, and it really began very slowly, just doing an interview with her, because at that time I was trying to make very short videos about telling stories of people who were survivors of human rights abuses. So I filmed Rain and then Danielle, and then gradually, as I got more and more into it, I realized that there could be a feature documentary here. And so it moved along in a very random way. It was not pre-planned to be a feature documentary, and we just went from one thing to another, and filmed over the course of several years, maybe 3 years. You can see with Danielle, her hair, her look, everything about her kept changing. At the beginning I was like, oh gosh, she's changed her hair, and by the end we were able to have her speak to why she looked so different every time.
Was it difficult to make approach to them, to make them talk, to open to you?
No, it was actually relatively easy. At the beginning everyone was very agreeable and cooperative, including the pimps. I would say that the experience of this film has changed radically since it went on Netflix, because first of all it was a festival film, and it's had a much longer life on Netflix, both in the United States and globally. And so that really changed many things, because people were happy to talk when it was just me, when maybe it was a film in festivals, but when it suddenly had a massive audience, a lot of people became uncomfortable and possibly regretted that they had spoken, actually.
Is it a frightening fact, actually, that still this problem exists all over the world? It's a global phenomenon, and we live in some so-called democratic society that, you know, with the strong human rights, and how can you explain that?
Well, I mean, I think that it probably is a problem that will never go away, ever. However, some things change, and change slowly comes. There's a section at the end about Backpage.com where Danielle goes and protests, and that has now, that way of finding prostitutes in the United States it's been shut down, and the founders have been sent to prison, and that happened in the last 2 months. So things are slowly changing, and there's also a slight shift away from arresting the girls and also boys, because it is important to remember that young men are also victims of pimp and pimp control. So there is a slow change, and I think that some of that is really tied up with who's making money and who's profiting, and the idea that internet sites like Backpage and others could be making so much money off the backs of other people has really struck a chord. And I would also say that we ended the film with President Obama speaking, and I think I can say here that I personally am not a fan of President Trump in any way whatsoever, but it is one issue that Obama felt strongly about, and has amazingly been taken up by the Trump administration, possibly the only issue. And as reluctant as I am to give any credit to Trump for anything, at least it's one Obama initiative he has not destroyed. So perhaps that's a good thing.
Do you think that maybe a lot of discussions upon this topic can open the mind of the people to consider about this problem and to try to not get into it for young people and for adults somehow to maybe try to help the ones that were victims once, and in that kind of way to, if we can't stop it, then to make it less than it is now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the underlying cause in many cases is vulnerability, and it's only young girls or boys who are vulnerable who will end up being forced into sex trafficking. And so that's true universally. So, you know, vulnerability can come from poverty, often does from poverty, extreme poverty, and also, you know, from situations at home or being misunderstood or misheard or whatever it is. So, you know, the poverty problem will be with mankind probably forever or for a lot longer. But I think if we understand the relationship of vulnerability broadly, that can help.
What would you like your film to have some kind of impact?
I think it's important for mostly men, who are mostly the buyers of sex, to understand that most likely the person they're buying sex from is not doing that volitionally of their own free will, and to really understand that even if it's being done out of economic necessity, that it really is not something that is pleasurable for that person. And just to understand that at the very minimum, and then proceed from there. Because I think, you know, especially in the United States, the idea of going to Vegas, a lot of young men will go for their, or they'll go to Canada now because the laws are a little gentler in Canada, but you would go for your stag night, or before, that's the night before you get married, or those sort of tourism, to understand that doing that can be very harmful to people, and you're supporting an industry that does exploit other human beings. So I could say, as the mother of sons, because I have 2 sons as well, I'm almost more concerned that they will persist in thinking that it's harmless to go away with a bunch of male friends and pay for sex, as much as I would worry about my daughters.
To be involved in, right?
Yeah.
So we'll proceed tomorrow at the panel discussion. I will once again say that it's going to take place in Colorado University at noon with the 6 participants. It will be moderated and interactive, so the public are very welcome to discuss with us and to open some topics which are very, I should say, very important nowadays, even in the modern world. So I would like to ask you if someone have a question for Džejn. Do you want something to ask, or if you have some suggestions over this topic? No one? How did you like the film? So, how did you like the film?
Me?
Yeah, for example.
I like it.
What do you like?
To have the privilege to hear some, I speak French better than English, but, or Serbian, but I really appreciate, and I think it's a favor to us to let us hear these girls, because I don't know anybody who has some experience like that. So for me it's like a new voice. I know this happened in this world, but I didn't hear the girls. This is the most important for me. Thank you.
I really think that it could happen to any one of us, you know, because it's always nice to hear that some better life is waiting for you, and all of us are sometimes you know, we're not always strong, we have our own dilemmas. So I think that it's very important to be aware that not just neglect and say, no, this couldn't happen to me. So I think that's an issue too. What do you think?
Yeah, and then, I mean, one thing I was just remembering is that, you know, when I made this film, I'm, you know, obviously a much older woman, but Robert Money, the pimp, the way that the pimp mentality works is sort of flattery and being complimentary, and I did not like that man, but I was polite to him, but he obviously wasn't going to tell me I was beautiful and young and all those things, but he spent a lot of time telling me how incredibly intelligent he thought I was, because he couldn't help himself. He had to try and compliment me and flatter me, and the only way he could think to do it was to tell me I was incredibly smart, and he loved my English accent, because I have an English accent. And you know, I was just thinking, it's like nobody is impervious to the charm offensive of a pimp when they want to be in a charm offensive. And it was kind of amusing and also kind of terrifying to see how he operated. And I will also say just another thing that happened is, after the film was on Netflix, I got a phone call from somebody, a message from him that he wanted $25,000 because he had seen the film on Netflix. He thought he was the best thing in the film, and if I didn't give him $25,000 because I must be rich because the film had been on Netflix, then he would send somebody to kill me. So I was a little upset for a couple of days, and I called one of the cops and I told him, and he said, oh, that guy, he wouldn't even know how to get from Chicago to New York, you're fine.
So lucky you that he doesn't know.
Yeah, so far I'm alive.
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't give him the money, yeah? No? No, okay.
Well, neither Netflix didn't give me the money.
Yeah. So thank you once again. Jane, do you want something to say more about this topic?
But yeah, just to thank everyone for coming and watching, because it is a difficult subject. I understand that, so thank you.
Thank you very much.